Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Moetivation, the show where we dive headfirst into the most amazing minds. My guest today is a very special guest. We've tried very hard and very long to get this guest because his mind is unbelievable. We've focused on many things such as emotional well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, and today we're going to focus on financial well-being with the CEO of FNB Islamic Banking, Ammanullah Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Aman. How are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm great, and I think your energy is infectious.
No, fantastic, man. You know what? That's what the show is about. We want to spread energy through the screen and we want to teach people very important things. And what is more important than financial well-being? You know, in a world where everyone is struggling with the economy and everyone's struggling to make ends meet, what advice could you give people just from a layman's point of view on how they can find financial well-being and how important financial well-being is?
Mo, you know, we always reach out to a financial expert. But if you really look at your own life or you look at your viewers' lives, they've been doing it all their life. It's just that they haven't formalized it in any way or form. And I think us as Muslims, and if you look at the Islamic ethos around it, I always like to kick off by talking to the 5 pillars of Islam. If we talk to our affirmation to Allah, that is between the individual and his creator, we'll park that.
Right.
But if you look at the other 4, let's kick off with a simple one, to make salah. In order to have your health, in order to have your stability of mind, the element of finance plays a role in keeping a person at a level where he's actually able to perform his physical abilities at an acceptable level. If we then move on to the next element, where if a person chooses or would love to perform his pilgrimage, you know, whether it is an Umrah or an Hajj, inshallah, this is where the elements of Islam kick in with financial fitness and financial responsibility.
Right.
We all, inshallah, would love to perform a Hajj. We all, inshallah, would love to perform a pilgrimage, you know, whether it is also to Palestine or to the holy lands of Makkah and Medina. But it all starts by saving. It all starts by us being effective money managers. And we know that we have to set some money aside, which then brings you to the next point, is that if you want to make a zakat payment, if you aim to be a zakat payer in your life,
Yes.
there is an element of managing your money which allows you to then do that. So, you know, in Allah's beautiful world, there are those that pay the zakat, there are those that receive. And inshallah, we pray that we always are able to support people who are in need. And, you know, when you really start spinning around the elements of what are the key functions that allow you to operate, not just as a human being, but as a Muslim,
Right.
the elements of financial management and financial well-being are actually quite important, because as we evolve in our lives, we finish with school, we finish with our university, or depending on whatever you choose to do, the next level in your life stage is the creation of a family. Now, in order to provide for a spouse, for children, the focus is no longer on Mo anymore. It becomes extended.
Yes.
And in order to allow for the extension to be successful, one has to plan for this, because now you're going to be introduced to school fees. Ask me, I've got 5 kids. Holidays, planning for their education going further. And I mean, so the list continues.
Yes.
So Mo, I think this element of financial fitness, just as well as your mental fitness and your physical fitness, I think it's equally important, because they all balance, I suppose, equally on the scale. And I think if one is out of kilter, you're going to feel it in your life.
Definitely. And I find that if you, I mean, like we spoke about just as we started the show with the introduction, financial fitness seems to be the bedrock that everything else falls on. Because if you look at financial fitness, if you're losing financial stability, if you're in debt and you're losing all your finances, surely it's going to take an impact on your spiritual side, it's going to take an impact on your mental side, your emotional side, and then of course, once those 3 are gone, it takes an impact on your physical side, which then, like you said, has this huge impact on all of our 5 pillars that we need to actually perform. So it's very important. But what lesson can we get? So there's a guy earning his salary and he's taking in and he feels that, you know what, this is just overwhelming. All my expenses are overwhelming in that. What one piece of advice could you give someone out there and say, listen, just start with this and watch it flow into everything else?
Mo, that is such an amazing question in its simplicity. So we got to look at ourselves as either a salary earner or a salary payer for the people that are self-employed.
Yes.
And I think you would know from your activities. Yeah. So if we look at ourselves as a salary earner, then the first word that has to come to mind is, how do I budget?
Right.
Because I'm getting a set amount of money every month, and I need to make that money work for me based on my lifestyle. So I think immediately what one would have to do is to take a quick audit of our lifestyles. I'm not talking about a SARS audit, but I'm talking about like a personal introspection in terms of what is it that my lifestyle entails, and if I reconcile the money that I earn, do the two tie up?
Yes, okay.
But if I'm a self-employed individual, then the element of money management comes into play, because there's money coming in and there's money going out. So I always like, if you don't mind, I'll use a technical term, your cash burn rate.
Okay.
And I really like the term cash burn rate, because it talks to exactly that point. I know how much money is coming in, but then how much money am I burning going out?
Okay.
And at some point in between, I need to allow for my genuine actual expenses to be covered. I need to allow for an element of savings. As a self-employed individual, I need to make provision that I pay myself so I can live a life as well. Right. And then inshallah, if there's something in excess, that money is not used for frivolous luxuries, but it's actually set aside. Now, this is the other portion where small business owners get caught up in is the money invested back into the business, or is the money used on extravagant international holidays, or is there element of prudence and some sort of conservativeness that comes into play? Yes. And what I love from this particular point for a self-employed is the Prophet ﷺ always emphasized the fact that start small. And I think, those simple words have got so much wisdom in them. So for a person starting off in business, start small, be patient, and inshallah, it will grow. For a person earning a salary, I think understand where you are, mirror your lifestyle to what your financial needs are. And from there, if you put your heart, your soul, and as Muslims, whatever we do it to the best of our ability, then inshallah, Allah will infuse Himself into that and you will grow. I've seen this through clients of mine, and alhamdulillah, through my own life as well.
Oh, that's fantastic advice, because it can actually make you structure all your finances, whether you're earning or you're paying. You structure it, and in that, you'll be able to find stability.
There's one important word that goes with that. Discipline. And if you look at our lives as Muslims, Salah requires discipline 5 times a day.
Yes.
If you want to fast, there's discipline involved in that. If you need to do any of the things we spoke of earlier, there's an element of discipline. Why not introduce a financial discipline into your life as well?
Yes, no, I love that, because discipline and consistency are the 2 things that I live by. Because if you can find discipline in every single day and you do it consistently over a period of time, like you're saying, you start small and it builds up eventually, and that's a fantastic way of doing it, and that's a brilliant tool. But what happens with someone who says, okay, I want to do this, but I'm in tremendous amounts of debt now, and I need to come out of this debt? Do I minimalize my life? Do I stop going out and eating out? Or what do I do? Because I find that this thing is strangling me and I cannot get out of this burden that I'm in.
It's a very real scenario. It's something that we see on a regular basis. We have people that are proud and want to tackle it by themselves. And alhamdulillah, some people are successful and manage to come out. For people that can't, I encourage you to reach out either to a family member or even to us in the banking fraternity.
Right.
I know within the bank I represent, we've got dedicated tools in our banking app. We call it Money Managers. It assists you in some of the most basic ways in terms of structuring your foundational budgets. And then also, if you feel that, this is strangling you, as you say, there's absolutely no harm in actually then reaching out further.
Okay.
Whether it's a community leader, a Maulana, for example, or someone that's a trusted member in the family. We're not here to solve our problems by ourselves only. There are people
Yes.
that are willing to assist. And certainly, to the best extent where I can assist someone, I will reach my hand out.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, we're going to go to a break now. But after the break, I just want to talk about 1 or 2 steps that someone in debt can actually use just to get themselves out and then start this financial well-being. I hope it's been so informative, because listening and learning about financial well-being is probably the most important aspect that you can find in your life. We'll see you after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Aman, before the break, we were talking about someone who is in debt. Can you give 1 or 2 steps that they can find just to take themselves out of debt and then go on this journey where they can budget or they can money management, the way you said in that? Just maybe from a personal point of view, just something that people can do just to get out of their debt.
Mo, where I would start is the element of introspection. No one knows your situation better than yourself.
Right.
And for me, when I'm faced with a challenge, and I can understand the emotional difficulties that come with something like debt, is I like to take a piece of paper and put a line down the middle.
Okay.
And I look at the positives and the negatives of the situation. But I feel that by actually writing down some of the thoughts that are, spinning around in my mind, it allows me just to take a moment to step back and actually analyze what the situation is. One of the things that I've always come across in my life, and I'm sure Mo in yours as well, is the anticipation of a problem is worse than the actual reality of the problem.
Yes.
We like to joke as kids that the anticipation of a smack is actually worse than actually getting the smack, because you always worry.
So true.
But coming back to this discussion, if we take a piece of paper, however you choose to do it, I feel one of the ways that you can actually allow your brain to digest the intensity of the problem you face is to write it down. Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. And if you start off, firstly, by making a clear and concise report of who you owe and what you owe, so that number is solid, it's in your mind, and you can actually start getting to work on it. And what I mean by this is that your brain can start processing what needs to happen. I understand that sometimes, it starts escalating like an avalanche. There's one starts falling upon the other.
Yes.
But if it's all down neatly, it allows you then to actually lay it out and say, okay, this is what I need, or this is what I'm responsible for. Now let me work an action plan for each individual item.
Right.
Very much like when people ask, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One little piece at a time.
Yes, yes.
And I think something as humongous as debt or, commitments, I think have to be started off by actually putting them down on paper. Then the next step, which I will come back to, is, which I mentioned earlier, is to reach out to people. And I think when people are in a difficult position, there is a strain that if I reach out, people think I'm just asking for handouts or whatever the case may be. And as you correctly pointed out, there are tools available. There are people available who can actually help you navigate through the difficulty of what needs to be done. So for example, in our own businesses, when we challenged with a shopping list of items, for me, I like to rank and then weight each issue.
Okay.
So there will be stuff that's exceptionally important and urgent that no matter what happens, we have to attend to.
Right.
And then as you go down that list, you'll come to the last one that will be not urgent and not important. So at least now you've prioritized for yourself how exactly I'm going to tackle this. And I think, Mo, step one for me is that if you can kickstart that, it's acknowledging what I've got myself into and then drafting a plan on how I get out of it.
I love that, because in anything in life, if you want to fix up the problem, start within yourself. And once you start within yourself, you'll be able to see where you're going wrong, whether it's financially, emotionally, whatever it may be, you'll see where you're going wrong. And I love that you brought that up, because it's so important to put things down, not to just let it float around in your head, consume you and eat you up. Take a pen, write it down, put it down, physically see it in front of you, and then strategize from there. That's such a brilliant way of looking at it.
I'd like to just bring in a portion that we discussed earlier. Once you've actually listed your priorities,
yes,
it is so important from a spiritual perspective, because, Mo, when I'm making my dua, rather than saying, oh, Allah, help me with all my problems, right? It's I can actually also pinpoint what problems I need immediate help.
That's so true. That's so
true.
I
mean, it's just
such
a thought,
wonderful way of looking at it. That's so true. I want to go on the other end of it. Someone who has tons of money, lots of money. And I've met a few people like this where they have a lot of money, but they constantly feel like it's not enough. They constantly feel like they're going to go broke any second. So they hold on to every last cent in the bank, under the mattress, wherever it may be. But they're just holding on to it in that. What advice can you give to those people in terms of making your finances work for you, number one, and number two, not burden you down, because you need to understand that rozi and risk comes from Allah.
Mo, that is, I think, such a well-placed question given the discussion that we're having. And who better to refer to than our own Islamic superheroes? I'm talking of none other than Abdurrahman ibn Auf.
Yes.
He was one of the Sahabas of the Prophet ﷺ that stuck to him through thick and thin. In fact, he was part of the first hijrah to Africa. He then came back to Makkah. He went to Medina with absolutely nothing except the business acumen that he had in his head. It is a fantastic story, and I suppose when we got more time, we'll go into it. But it is reputed that if Abdurrahman ibn Auf lifted a stone, he would find gold under it. I did an analysis and an exercise because, funny enough, he actually left a will on his holdings. Given the gold that he left behind for his family, his collection of camels, horses, goats, and the land that all of these assets resided upon. In today's numbers, if you added up the top 10 wealthiest people in the world, they wouldn't come close to what Abdurrahman ibn Auf was.
Wow.
Yet, Abdurrahman ibn Auf's greatest achievement was not his financial position. It was the fact that the Prophet ﷺ had named him as one of the 10 people that would enter Jannah.
Wow.
Now let's get that straight, right? Here's a man who technically has the Midas touch. Whatever he touches turns to gold. He had more money than anyone at the time. And someone questioned him and said to him, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, you are so blessed. What do you attribute this luck or this blessing to? And he stopped for a moment and he pondered. And he said, I don't actually know. But the one thing I can tell you, when it comes to the calculation of my zakat, I am absolutely impeccable in how I calculate the zakat. So what I ensure first and foremost is that the portion that is due for zakat is paid, and is paid accurately. And he said, other than that, I don't know. But I mean, he gave tons in charity. He gave to the Prophet directly. Now, if we just analyze that for a moment, that means in Islam, there's no sin in being wealthy. But in how you look after your brother who requires assistance is of paramount importance. Your disbursement of your zakat, the charities that you get involved in, the goodness that you give to your community. Then there's nothing wrong in how wealthy you become. But then at the same time, given the social environment that we live in a country like South Africa, I think it's important also to understand, and these are words of the Prophet ﷺ, that he would not go to sleep until he knew that his neighbor belly was full. So, Mo, I think that for those that have been blessed, it's also a perfect time for introspection, to say, Allah has blessed me with this bounty of wealth. How is it that I can benefit my family firstly, my community and those people around me? And then I think, the element of moral conscience, your ethics, and then also, not just to splurge unnecessarily. But at the end of the day, if you have been blessed with something like this, then you should actually be grateful for it. And we should also never forget the saying that sometimes Allah gives people a lot so they can come closer, or He gives them a lot so He can push them away. Similarly, He takes away from those so they can come closer, or they can be pushed away. You need to do it. You need to make a decision as to where you fall into that larger spectrum.
It's so amazing how all this ties up into what we've spoken about over these past few months on the show, where when you look at yourself, you need to be able to give. We were educated for greed. And that's our problem, because we were born to give, and yet educated for greed. So what we feel is when we have, we need to hold on to it because we just don't want to lose. But instead, the more you give, the more you're going to get. And in like you just said now, we know some people have been given a lot as a test, and that's your test of gratitude. And some people it's been taken away from, and that's your test of patience. And with patience and gratitude coming together with those who actually have, when they are grateful for what they have, they can help those who are being patient. And that's the beautiful system of Allah that you were talking about earlier as well. It's fantastic.
You know, I think it would be amiss of me to talk about the physics of Allah's world. When we analyze certain things from what we've been taught from an Islamic perspective, it blows my mind even up to now. So I advocate for everyone, not just Muslims, to look at Islamic banking as an alternate option. How amazing, Mo, because when you don't take interest, Allah increases your wealth. When you pay zakat, you're giving away. You should technically be getting poorer, but somehow your wealth is increased. The normal laws of physics don't work in Allah's world, as I call it. So I think we are blessed with knowledge that has come down to us. Sometimes we try to explain these Islamic financial structures to colleagues of ours at the bank or, clients.
Yes.
And they say, wow, this is the freshest financial structure I've seen. And then I have to correct them that this is a 1400-year-old structure I'm showing you.
It's the beauty of barakat.
We need to look at the beauty that is already there, available for us to use.
Wow, man, that's fantastic. We're coming up to the end of part 1 now. But as you discussed earlier regarding a will, and that is what we need to discuss in part 2, which is the importance of a will, why it's so important, and as a Muslim, the duty of that. So our viewers, you can join us next week on part 2, where we were going to be discussing the will. But I do know that you have taken a lot from today, whether you're in debt, whether you have an abundance and Allah has blessed you wonderfully with money, or if you're just getting by on ends meet, know that there is always a way in consistency and in patience. And remember, don't let making a living stop you from making a life. This is motivation, and let me motivate you.